gambling, arson, loan sharking, and labor racketeering.
Faces of the accused because they are presumed to be innocent. This sweep, more than 100, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, involving 7 mob families, the 5 New York families, the Gambino, Genovese, Colombo, Bonanno, and Lucchese families, as well as the smaller New Jersey family, the Cavalcantes. They are believed to be the inspiration for The Sopranos, and in New England, as well as a slew of bookies, middle management, and other...
So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So join, started federal, grab the Colombo, see proof of work, I made it legible. Move out to cyber, was keeping crimes off of the web for you. Started a special group, yeah, I went private. Fell in love with Bitcoin and started mining. That's when I started shining. Getting green, dropping gems, rocking the comic club, got them sent. They laugh, popping limbs. Give them life, here's the boost. Gotta put in the work, here's the proof. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So here's the proof, huh? Give the story because it's better than the truth, huh? Allegories will keep between me and you, huh? We get coins, never scraps. See this a Bitcoin getting cat. So join, get it back.
Here we are. Welcome. It's November 1st, 2022. I hope everyone had a good and happy and safe Halloween. Joining me today, Criag Handler. Thanks, Craig, for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
You guys might remember Craig from a previous podcast. I don't even remember. What did we talk about last time?
That was the that store clerk out in, what was he, Arizona?
Yeah.
Defended
who I still don't think hasn't been charged. So
I don't think
greatest,
so either.
Greatest prosecutor ever out there. I'm moving out to Vegas because I'm sorry, but that just was not. That was well beyond self-defense, and there hasn't been so much as a battery charge on the dude. So he's either well connected or they've just had enough out there. So people really took that like sideways. People were complaining that we were defending the bad guys, and it's like it's not about that. It's just a legal analysis. That's all it is.
Well,
it's not it's not how I personally feel or you personally felt.
Right, of course. I think and I said that. I said, I'm the last one to not encourage people to defend themselves, but I question the actions of this clerk. And I think, like all things on TV or in the media or in the news, and I guess we're going to talk a little bit about this today, people's reaction to things is emotional, and the fact that we were taking a legal approach to the event and the incident, I think was maybe lost on some of the viewers, or quite frankly they just don't care. They're sick of people being victimized. They're sick of criminals having more rights than law-abiding citizens, and
exactly.
I
think that's a big part of it.
Stupid prizes, right?
I think that's a big part of it, and I just hope. I mean, I think that's something that I hope I never lose the ability to go, Spock on a situation, meaning take the emotion out of it and start and look at it from a. I think there's a real danger in letting your emotions drive your reasoning. And we see this in our personal lives when you get mad and you start making bad decisions and then later on you're like, I probably should have said that or done that, because you let your emotions take over. When it comes to these situations, you see it all the time. It's these emotional responses. And then I think the training part of it from the legal training part of it is something that carries with you for most lawyers. For most of us who don't become like hyper political or politicized, can step away and say, all right, well, this is what my gut wants it to be, but this is honestly what a legal analysis would look like. And I got that today. I got into a back and forth with someone about the charges against this dude who broke into Nancy Pelosi's house and attempted murder, not attempted murder. And he hit him with a hammer. How could it not be? And you're like, that's not the basis of the calculation. It's not hammer to the head equals attempted murder, because most people, and there are thousands of hammer attacks a year, and most of these people are not charged with attempted murder, even though emotionally, I agree. I think anyone who comes at somebody with a hammer, you'd say, how could they not have wanted to kill them? But as we know, the calculation and the discussion about when you charge someone and having to prove something like specific intent, the specific intent to end someone's life isn't something you can just go to a jury with and be like, he hit him with a hammer. No, I don't need to say anymore. Well, that's not going to get you to an attempted murder. It's just not 9 out of 10 times. It's not going to get you there. So that's kind of what started me thinking about doing this show today was the emotional response to this crazy incident that occurred. And then, of course, Elon's takeover of Twitter overlaps with this, because Elon came out with a tweet referencing the situation, and I think he's since deleted it and gotten all sorts of grief, and the whole concept of conspiracy theories came up. And I find that a little bit laughable too, given what's happened in the last 5 years or so, that I wanted to talk about this idea of being dismissive of people questioning official reporting as conspiracy theories, and how anybody in good faith can actually make that argument, given what's happened and how many conspiracy theories have been proven true in the last few years. So we'll start with the attack on Paul Pelosi, who according to most recent reporting, he's expected to make a full recovery, which is great. I have no doubt that he was injured seriously and went to the hospital. And so what went down was a few days ago, I think it was last Friday, on or about last Friday, reports came in that somebody broke into Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's house, where she wasn't home at the time, at around 2:30 in the morning, and ended up confronting Paul Pelosi, her husband. And what came of that was him with a skull fracture in the hospital. And then drips and drabs of information were slowly released. So here's a video clip for those that haven't heard about this. Here's what some of the official reporting.
This morning, the hammer-wielding intruder who allegedly broke into the Pelosi home through a back door, facing attempted homicide charges after striking 82-year-old Paul Pelosi in the head. The House Speaker has been spending time at the hospital with her husband, who's recovering from life-threatening injuries. It happened early Friday morning when 42-year-old David DePape allegedly broke into Pelosi's San Francisco home. Sources saying he shouted, "Where is Nancy? Where is Nancy?"
He was looking for Mrs. Pelosi.
But the Democratic leader was across the country in Washington, D.C. Instead, police say the suspect confronted her husband, who dialed 911.
RP stated that there's a male in the home and that he's going to wait for his wife. RP stated that he doesn't know who the male is.
Police credit the quick-thinking dispatcher who picked up on Pelosi's clues that he was in immediate danger and sent help within minutes.
It was life-saving, in my opinion.
Officers arriving at the scene amid what they describe as a struggle over the suspect's hammer. Police tackling DePape, but not before they say he fractured Pelosi's skull and seriously injured his arms and hands. Investigators later revealing they found zip ties inside the home. Pelosi undergoing surgery over the weekend. The Speaker saying Saturday his condition continues to improve. The focus now turning to the suspect's digital footprint, a personal blog published under his name, brimming with far-right extremism, conspiracy theories like QAnon, and anti-Semitic postings. Democrats, including President Biden, sounding the alarm.
You can't condemn the violence unless you condemn those people who continue to argue the election was not real.
Republican lawmakers echoing concerns.
And we've got to do everything we can to lower the rhetoric.
A call for civility after a savage attack on the husband of the Speaker of the House.
So disturbing, Miguel, and this comes amid a
So there's the mainstream media description of what occurred. And of course, they slide in the whole full of right-wing extremist ideas, which is, I guess, is what's very aggravating about it, is that we're talking about insane people when these things happen, and the idea that they're going to subscribe to a particular ideology and kind of fall on party lines is insane.
Mm-hmm.
There's a funny picture, not a funny, but here's an interesting article in the New York Post. Let me see if I could share this. Share screen. Let's see, window, Chrome tab. Here we go. Can you see this?
I see it. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
So, okay, so you see this photo of his house, right? Which I thought was the most. At first, when I was scrolling through, I thought this was a Halloween article because I thought those were tombstones. I was like, that's the sickest Halloween decorations ever. But interesting article. The flag here is a little bit curious. What's this? What is this? It doesn't look like a far right flag. Or if I turn sideways, is that a Confederate? Oh no, that's not a Confederate flag. That looks like something that is.
I mean, it
probably
looks
not
like
something-
the LGBTQ flag,
right? Right. I think it's also BLM flag. So again, I don't care. I'm just saying it doesn't really line up. If you read the article who was written by a former partner of his, talks about him being so mentally ill that he thought he was Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
He disappeared for a while. He came back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's this gypsy. She goes by the name of Gypsy.
Yeah.
She's a self-avowed nudist and hippie, and I believe she even claims that his ideology is very much in line with her own, and she describes herself as a progressive.
Right. So again, it doesn't mean, here you go, right? It doesn't mean, if he is, that I would sit there and say, oh, well, look, this is proof positive. But I just find it very bizarre that when these events occur, they automatically seem to find something that connects him to the right. And then put him into that barrel and be like, let's get it pushed out before we have any facts on anything. You have the president of the United States implying that this was, based on right-wing rhetoric. Everyone's up in arms. You see, this is proof. You have Meathead, what's his face, from Family, All in the Family, saying that this is directly related to Trump and Trump's rhetoric. I mean, this is insanity to be able to try to causally connect this dude to anything that happened. They say, oh, this is because of people saying this or that or the other thing. This is a crazy person that it's going to be very difficult to unwind what his true motivations were. But nonetheless, taking that out of it for the moment. So he busts into the house of the Speaker of the House at 2:30 a.m., which I think most of us are saying, how is that possible? How do you get into the house of the third most important person in the United States government by in your underwear, carrying a hammer and smashing a window, and you just walk into somebody's house? Now, maybe we're all a little bit delusional that we think there would be a Secret Service detail, especially in 2022, and there would be some sort of security in place. But I don't know. Did that strike you as odd?
It strikes me as very odd, and it begs the question. I mean, they are so frightened of right-wing extremism that, like you said, the number 3 in line to run this country wouldn't have any security at her own residence. At least the kind of security that would have prevented some nutbag like this guy from just breaking in, brazenly smashing the window and breaking in. I mean, it defies credulity.
And by the way, that doesn't mean that's not the case. It means, after 9/11, I think people were very surprised at how easy someone could take over an airline with a box cutter.
Well, yes and no. I mean, that no one had ever done anything like that before. No one had ever taken control of the cockpit and then used the aircraft as essentially a guided missile. So I think to anticipate something like that is difficult, but some right-wing crazy zealot breaking in, I mean, that's something you should be on the lookout
Yeah,
for.
that's pretty easy. That's much easier to defend against. That's a good
Yeah.
point. You're talking about what was considered a novel attack versus like the oldest, shittiest type of attack in the
Right,
planet. You know,
exactly.
walking up to your house with a ball peen hammer coming through a window isn't exactly Mission Impossible style
Right.
entrance
Yeah.
into your house. But at the same time, I guess I mention it because maybe this just sheds some light on the fact that there is a lack of security for whatever reason on a lot of the houses of people in Congress that we would imagine, especially her, would imagine that would be very difficult to simply just walk up. So let's assume that's I don't think it's crazy to ask that question. And I think people who are freaked out when people ask that question, they say, well, what are you into, a conspiracy theory? No, it's just a question. It's logical. People think about that and go, I wouldn't imagine you'd be able to do that in most people's houses, let alone the Speaker of the House. So he gains entry into the House. And I think some of the confusion about the reporting started because of the 911 call. I'm going to play the 911 call here. And I think, there we go.
I haven't heard this.
Yeah, this is the full dispatch call, which is here. Where did I put it? Here we go.
Broadway, across of Scott and Normandy. Hey, 14-hour copy. RP stated that there's a male in the home and that he's going to wait for his wife. RP stated that he doesn't know who the male is, but he advised that his name is David and that he is a friend. RP sounded somewhat confused. 12 over back and copy.
Units code 3 to 2640 Broadway per 14-hour.
12 over copy. 15-hour also code 3.
Everyone 12 advice insufficient units on scene 2640 Broadway. Special call medic 66, location 2640 Broadway.
A priority 910, 2640 Broadway, across of Scott and Normandy. Hey, 14-hour copy. RP stated that there's a male in the home and that he's going to wait for his wife. RP stated that he doesn't know who the male is, but he advised that his name is David and that he is a friend.
So I think that's where a lot of the confusion came from. But this always kind of made sense to me because first of all, dispatch calls are a relay. The dispatch call to the RMP to the regular marked patrolman is a relay. It's hearsay. It's two-layer hearsay. It's the person calling 911 and then the 911 operator relaying that. So oftentimes there are discrepancies between that information. That doesn't surprise me. I think the whole friend thing, he's a friend got people off, and I guess it got people off in the wrong direction. When I heard that made total sense to me. Is that if you have a crazy person in your house, you're gonna try to call the police and between the lines discreetly get the information to them that you're in grave danger. You're not going to say, hey, there's a fucking psychopath in my house. You're going to say, oh yeah, if you could come by, there's someone here who's a friend of mine and I want you to talk to him. And, and the dispatchers, I think, understood that and read between the lines of dispatcher. When I heard that, to me, I understood that he probably wasn't a friend, but people really ran off with that as like, oh, he says he's a friend, but then he also says he's a stranger. It's like, well, if some crazy person, like a legit crazy person's in your house, that's something that made a lot of sense to me.
Well, let's talk about that because I don't know if I necessarily agree because number one, not only did he purportedly say he's a friend, but he knew the guy's name. He said,
yeah, well,
David. So in order for the possibility that Pelosi was trying to play it off to not maybe escalate the situation or tip this guy off that, he was speaking to the police or whatever, it would you would have to take the position that the guy broke in, was confronted by Pelosi, and that they were just having a discussion and this guy let him make a phone call. To me,
so I agree.
Right?
I don't know why I thought that initially, but it turns out that part is actually what happened. So this is the criminal complaint sworn out by the FBI agent. So he was charged on the state and federal level. He was charged by Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, with attempted kidnapping and some other federal charges. And then he was charged at the state level as of yesterday with attempted murder, which is why I got to a whole Twitter argument with somebody about the whole hammer and attempted murder or not. I'll talk about the charges a little bit later and why they probably charge both state and federal. Why I think that has more to do with bail and more to do with other things outside of what they think they could actually prove. But this is what, according to the probable cause statement within the affidavit for the complaint to arrest this dude federally. So this is sworn out by the FBI agent. On October 28th, 2022, 2:23 a.m., San Francisco dispatch received a 911 call from Paul Pelosi, located at the Pelosi residence in San Francisco, California. Pelosi stated words to the effect that there is a male in his home and the male is going to wait for Pelosi's wife. Pelosi further conveyed that he does not know who the male is. The male said his name is David. At 2:31 a.m., San Francisco Police Department officer so-and-so responded to Pelosi's residence, California, and California knocked on the door. When the door was opened, Paul Pelosi and DePape were both holding a hammer with one hand, and DePape had his other hand holding Pelosi's forearm. So this sounds like they're struggling over the same hammer.
Yeah.
Pelosi greeted the officers. The officers asked them what was going on. DePape responded that everything was good. Officers then asked Pelosi and DePape to drop the hammer. DePape pulled the hammer from Pelosi's hand and swung the hammer, striking Pelosi in the head, which is fucking nuts that the cops were actually a witness to the assault, which means their body cameras caught this.
Yeah.
And it's also bizarre that in this situation that this guy didn't end up getting shot, because assuming they could discern DePape from Paul Pelosi, which I would imagine every cop in San Francisco knows what Paul Pelosi looks like.
Yeah.
It's crazy that when you open the door and you see them kind of struggling over a hammer, you don't immediately go, well, if this guy breaks this hammer loose from Paul, I'm going to shoot this guy or at least tase him. I just find that odd. And I want to see the video for this reason.
Yeah.
DePape pulled the hammer from Pelosi's hand and swung the hammer, striking Pelosi in the head. Officers immediately went inside and were able to restrain DePape. While officers were restraining DePape, Pelosi appeared to be unconscious on the ground. Officers removed the cell phone, cash, clipper cards. Fuck are clipper cards? Clipper cards?
Yeah.
And an unidentified card from DePape's right shorts pocket. It was like a Pokemon card. Like, what do you mean unidentified? DePape provided officers his first and last name. After the officers asked DePape if he had an ID on him, DePape said it might be in his backpack on the back porch, and later stated his backpack was near the broken glass. When officers removed DePape from Pelosi's residence, police body-worn camera footage showed a glass door that appeared to be in laminated glass, which, by the way, typically means it's some sort of like shatter-resistant, may even be bullet-resistant glass. Normally, people don't have laminated glass in their house. Broken, I added that part. That wasn't it. Broken near the door handle. San Francisco PD recovered zip ties in Pelosi's bedroom and in the hallway near the front door of Pelosi's residence. In addition, law enforcement searched DePape's backpack at the Pelosi residence, and they found, among other things, a roll of tape, white rope, one hammer, one pair of rubber and cloth gloves, and a journal. Witness statements. So right now, this part of the FBI affidavit is entirely based on the body camera footage that they reviewed. If you read what this really is, this is their summarization of the body cam footage. And now witness statements. SFPD officer so-and-so was able to interview a witness. Witness one, who saw an individual in all black carrying a large black bag on his back walking near the Pelosi residence where witness one was parked. Witness one was working private security at an address nearby. Holy shit. Maybe he should have been working private security at the number 3 person in the government's address. Witness one then heard what sounded like banging on either a door or car, and then heard the sirens within a minute or two. Pelosi was interviewed by SFPD officer so-and-so in the ambulance during transport to the hospital where Pelosi stated, again, this is hearsay, but it's fine. But this is what the officer told the agent who put this in the complaint. Pelosi stated that he had never seen DePape before. Pelosi was asleep when DePape came into Pelosi's bedroom and stated he wanted to talk to Nancy. When Pelosi told him that Nancy was not there, DePape stated that he would sit and wait. Police stated that his wife would not be home for several days and that DePape reiterated that he would wait. God, that would be an uncomfortable weekend, right? Again, it's like they should make like a movie out of that, just hanging out with this kidnapper, waiting for him to wait for your wife to come back. Pelosi was able to go into the bathroom, which is when he was able to call 911. Pelosi stated that when the officers arrived, that was when DePape struck him with the hammer. So again, this is not a typical home invasion. This guy came in and they actually started a dialogue, you know, and that's where he learned his name. So again, you know, you're talking about a crazy person who's going to let you go to the bathroom, who's going to not take your phone away from you, who's going to tell you his name because he's fucking crazy and he's not a typical, you know, burglar or home invader that's going to be thinking about all the things that we would normally think about. In the subsequent interview with law enforcement officers, Paul stated that DePape had a hammer with him during the event described above at the Pelosi residence. Further, the hammer did not belong to the Pelosi family. And now this is interesting. The agent then reviewed, reading between the lines here, because it says, in a Mirandized and recorded interview of DePape by SFPD, DePape provided the following information. So this is very interesting, right? Because here's a complaint written by an agent who, by the way, a baby agent. This person's only been an agent for like 3 years, which I also find a little bit ridiculous. Why in God's name are you letting an agent who's only been an agent since 2019 swear out a complaint like this? That's going to be really subject to ridicule. But that's neither here nor there, I guess. So here's what he said during the Mirandized recording, which, by the way, is foilable. Something else that should end up on YouTube at some point. The body cam footage.
And the 911 call.
The 911 call, which it is already on the internet.
No, but wait, is Pelosi's call to 911?
Right. That should that we haven't heard yet either. And the body cam video and this probably lengthy interrogation, which was video recorded, and audio recorded, obviously, that crazy people typically like to talk. So these videos, and I've seen hundreds of them on YouTube. I watch interrogation videos all the time on YouTube because they're very interesting to me. And crazy people are some of the more fun interviews because they're not concerned about self-preservation. It's one of the biggest differences between when you watch someone who says they're insane in an interview and someone who actually is insane. And one of the biggest distinctions between the two is that the person like the Nicholas Cruz kid who shot up the school down in Florida, Marjorie Stoneman. He tried to pretend he was crazy. And he did all the things that he sees in movies as crazy, the voices, and the voice told me, and I'm hearing voices, but wouldn't admit to much of anything. Whereas actual crazy people go in and say, yeah, I chopped them up. I killed them. I know it was wrong, but I didn't care. And I don't really feel any different about it. That's what real crazy people do. They don't think like, ooh, this is bad for my defense. That's not how crazy people think. And so that
I guess you can have many different levels of crazy.
Yeah.
You know, there's like Ted Bundy crazy, who is extremely smart, very eloquent, very thoughtful, but no less crazy. And then there's like the kind of crazy you're talking.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would venture to guess that this DePape guy is not the Ted Bundy.
No, when I say crazy, I mean the kind of crazy that eliminates the intent necessary to charge them with serious crimes. That's the type of crazy I'm talking about. Not that they're not smart, but that, as you know, for these types of crimes, when you're saying, hey, I'm going to plead insanity, it's not like the movies. You just go, I hear voices, and they're like, he's crazy. Yeah. You know, there's not understanding the difference between right and wrong. There's certain standards that you have to be that have to be determined psychologically in order for you to actually use an insanity defense or diminished capacity defense. And these type of interviews are usually very long because they waive their rights almost always, and they love to talk, and they'll talk in detail. And you'll hear in here, he actually says in here, it's insane. That needs to come out. Like, so, when you're talking about the conspiracy theory, then that needs to be published so we could all see it, and it puts everything to rest.
Right.
But if it doesn't get published, then people start to wonder what else was said during that interview that they don't want the public, hearing. So here's what he said. DePape stated that he was going to hold Nancy hostage and talk to her. If Nancy were to tell DePape the truth, he would let her go. And if she lied, he was going to break her kneecaps. DePape was certain that Nancy would not have told the truth. In the course of the interview, DePape articulated he viewed Nancy as the leader of the pack of lies told by Democratic Party. DePape also later explained that by breaking Nancy's kneecaps, she would then have to be wheeled into Congress, which would show the members of Congress there were consequences to actions. DePape also explained generally that he wanted to use Nancy to lure other individuals to DePape. That's very interesting. Were those other individuals political figures? If they were they all Democrats? Were some of them Republicans? Was he going to throw Rand Paul another beating just for good measure? DePape stated that he broke into the house through a glass door, which was a difficult task that required the use of a hammer. Okay, that also lends credence to the idea that the glass might have been reinforced in some way, because typically a glass door with a hammer is not difficult at all. It might also explain why the glass was on the outside. People have shown that in the video. If you break a glass from the outside in, the glass typically flies in. There's glass outside, which looks like someone trying to bust out. But if the glass was laminated, it might have caused problems where he had to rip it out and he's pulling it towards him, and it just ending up, just again, a theory, but it could explain that. DePape stated that he broke into the house using a glass door, which was difficult. DePape stated that Pelosi was in the bed and appeared surprised by DePape. If he wasn't surprised, that would be alarming. So remember, this is the agent's interpretation of the interrogation video.
Right.
This agent would have to be insane to put something in here that, like the statement that DePape said that Pelosi was surprised. If that's a lie, that's on video. That this agent would have to be downright suicidal to lie about something like that. So I believe all of this is this language was reviewed multiple times by an AUSA who also saw the video, who also made sure that everything in here can be backed up and correlated to the tape, because that's a critical piece of evidence. So again, I fully believe this, because you'd have to be totally insane to say, if DePape said he wasn't surprised to see me because he was a lover of mine, and then the agent wrote, he said he was surprised, that's insane, right? Yeah, that would be something that I just want to believe. DePape told Pelosi to wake up. DePape told Pelosi he was looking for Nancy. Where's Nancy? Well, I think we all wonder where Nancy is sometimes. Pelosi responded that she was not present. Tell me about it. Pelosi asked how they could resolve the situation and what DePape wanted to do. DePape stated he wanted to tie Pelosi up so that DePape could go to sleep, as he was tired from having had to carry a backpack to the Pelosi residence. Again, right? Normally when you do a home invasion, you get a good night's rest, so you don't need to take a nap while in the house. Around this time, according to DePape started taking out twist ties from his pocket so that he could restrain Pelosi. Twist ties sound like, sandwich wraps. Open up,
bag of bagels,
right? Like, which would be hysterical if he saved up finally.
They were probably zip ties. They were probably zip ties.
Well, I disagree because okay, she uses the word twist ties. I would have thought she would have put that in quotes, because he might call zip ties twist ties, but the agent knows the difference between twist ties and zip ties. They give you, they gave us. Not only obviously do they give you handcuffs at the FBI, but they give you restraining zip ties that are like those cuff-shaped ones that as backups if you're going on large arrests. So, assuming this woman was an idiot, this agent, she would know even just from that. But yeah, the idea of him trying to tie him up with sandwich twist ties would be hysterical. Pelosi moved towards another part of the house, but DePape stopped him, and together they went back into the bedroom. While talking to each other, Pelosi went into the bathroom, where Pelosi grabbed the phone to call 911. DePape stated he felt like Pelosi's actions compelled him to respond. DePape remembered thinking that there was no way the police were going to forget about the phone call. Good guess. What are the odds that 911 just says, it's only Pelosi's house. Let's check on it tomorrow morning. DePape explained that he did not leave after Pelosi's called 911 because much like the American founding fathers with the British, he was fighting against tyranny without the option of surrender. DePape reiterated this sentiment elsewhere in the interview. DePape stated that they went downstairs to the front door. The police arrived and knocked on the door, and Pelosi ran over and opened it. Pelosi grabbed onto DePape's hammer, which was in DePape's hand. At that point in the interview, DePape repeated that DePape did not plan to surrender and that he would go through Pelosi. DePape stated that he pulled the hammer away from Pelosi and swung the hammer towards Pelosi. DePape explained that Pelosi's action resulted in Pelosi taking the punishment instead. Then they go into some of the items found in the residence, which I think the FBI did execute the search warrant. Seized 2 hammers, a sword, a pair of rubber and cloth gloves. The agents also found evidence that DePape lived in the garage, including DMV paperwork, IRS letters, and PayPal credit cards. So there's a statement. I don't think I read it in here. It's in another statement. I think it was maybe related to the state charges, that he stated he didn't intend on killing Paul. And that's what I'm talking about as far as the attempted murder charges. People think it's a lot. It's a slam dunk. I disagree. They're in the state, in the press release for the state, they said there was more. They charged attempted murder based on some of the conversation. So my guess is there's a lot more that occurred conversation wise in that house. And it's not uncommon to leave that out. This is literally the complaint or indictment is the bare bones of what you need to get your you know that. Craig, if I didn't mention, Craig's a lawyer as well. So it's not uncommon. In fact, it's encouraged to leave out, because if you're wrong, now you have to go back and correct a defective indictment. So you make it as bare bones as possible to get the complaint signed by the judge to effectuate the arrest, your indictment or search warrant or whatever it may be, and nothing more, because you don't want to risk putting too much in there, especially in the early parts of an investigation.
Well, look, I mean, that all sounds very plausible to me. Now, you're talking about the FBI agent would be crazy to, document something that wouldn't be corroborated by the actual evidence. But, and this gets to the conspiracy theory aspect of the story, which is that there are going to be a lot of people out there that have no faith in the FBI and the FBI's ability to tell the truth, and the likelihood that the actual evidence will be made public and that it will come out. So I guess, what is the conspiracy theory that has been, whether it came from Elon Musk or some other?
It didn't start with them. So Elon tweeted, there's in sum and substance, Elon's tweet was, there's more than a fair chance that there's more to the story. But he, I think, inserted a link to some website that's known for peddling false information, which I've never heard of the website. I'm not one to read a lot of wacky websites. I do wonder, if I looked at that website, I bet you I could find a decent handful of things that were considered conspiracy theories that are now been, proven false or positive or negative based, on what we know. And that's what kind of blows my mind. Is I agree with you that there is a general level of distrust based on what's happened over the last 5 years, and including these same people telling you you're indulging in conspiracy theories were the same ones that were so sure that the Trump PP dossier was like gospel.
And they still refuse to call that a conspiracy theory.
Right.
They won't admit it.
Well, what it was
didn't the director of the FBI refuse to call it that under oath?
Yeah. I think he hedged and said things like, well, some of it's true. Yeah, like names and dates of shit's probably true, but the actual substance of it was dog shit. And so all of this stuff was never corroborated about, the prostitutes and the urination on the bed and Obama's bed, all this crazy stuff that to rational people, this is where we talked about, you let your emotions and your hatred for an individual overtake your logic and say, what are the odds that this sounds so ridiculous? Like, this sounds so ridiculous. But not only did a lot of otherwise rational people latch onto this, but the mainstream media, it was like 4 years of this. So to come back, and now it's been basically debunked. The entire thing's been debunked. And people will still tell you Russian collusion. It's been debunked. Whatever you think happened with Russia, or these people think happened, nothing ever came from it. Oh, they arrested people for lying about. Yeah, that's what happens. What happens is it's what happens when you can't actually arrest people for the charges you were hoping to get them on. You get them on false statements. You get them on lying. You twist people in such a knot that they start lying about shit that they should be lying about, but has nothing to do with the actual underlying charge of you being a Russian asset. So you get idiots that are lying about things, and then they're like, "Oh, good," and then they say, "Well, we have X amount of indictments related to that investigation." Yeah, but how many of those relate to those people being Russian assets? Well, zero. No one was. Yeah. And so. Yeah, here's another thing I stumbled across when talking about the conspiracy theories. Here's another set of conspiracy theories.
Yeah. And when people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Our data from the CDC today suggests, that vaccinated people do not carry the virus, don't get sick, and that it's not just in the clinical trials, but it's also in real-world data.
Wow, sounds compelling.
If you get vaccinated, that vaccine will basically prevent you from getting sick with COVID. It will prevent you from having to go to the hospital with COVID symptoms. It will prevent you from dying from COVID. Great. Good for you.
Amazing.
What this means is that we can get there with vaccines. Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person.
Right.
Potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way. Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person.
Wow.
A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus. The virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
Everyone who takes the vaccine is not just protecting themselves, but reducing their transmission to other people and allowing society to get back to normal.
A lot of indications right now that are telling us that there is a protection against transmission of the disease.
And it goes on and on and on.
I think
and so. What? Go ahead.
I think also conversely, and more to the point, in this particular episode and in instance, what we're talking about here is like the Hunter Biden laptop, which they claim
that's another example
was a conspiracy theory, and it turned out to be absolutely true. So
not only a conspiracy theory, but we had 20 former senior members of the intelligence community coming out and saying this is classic Russian disinformation.
Yeah.
And some of us are like, well, it may be, but you have a guy who I think admitted leaned left, voted, was a Democrat, who was in possession of this laptop that only wanted his money, by the way. It wanted nothing to do with this, but eventually said, hey, this guy stiffed me. We have receipts. It's very easy to put somebody in, 2020, whatever year it was, in a vicinity of an area at a time to show he was actually in that area at the time. And then the analysis of the laptop would be dispositive. You'd be able to determine very easily whether this was authentic or not. Why not look into it? Why not investigate it? But they immediately come out and say, it's Russian disinformation. Anyone who talks about this is peddling conspiracy theories to the point where it was blocked on Facebook. Right. Twitter was blocking they banned the New York Post. They banned the New York Post. They disabled their account pre-election. And now we learn what? 100% true. It's all true. It's all authentic. Jussie Smollett, conspiracy theory that he did it to himself. When people like us heard it, we said, this doesn't sound right. Because what are you, conspiracy theorists? What do you think? He beat himself up? Yeah, people do crazy shit.
MAGA country in Chicago.
Right. COVID vaccines stopping transmission. COVID vaccines being 97% effective. Now we're down to practically single digits for some of these variants and what it does. Mm-hmm. There's example after example after example in the last 5 years alone of supposed conspiracy theories. So I would say to those people that are so, and again, I'm not saying what happened to Paul Pelosi. I think it's going to shake out the majority of what the mainstream media's narrative and what's being put out there is probably by and large accurate. There's probably a little bit of BS on the margins here, but it's coming out more and more that this looks like the actions of a crazy person and who took advantage of very weak or no security at their house.
What is the conspiracy theory? Do you have those details?
Yeah, it's that it was his gay lover, that there's a prior relationship between the two, and that this was a domestic. Because originally there were reports that this came in as a wellness check, that Nancy called the cops, and it was wellness check. Now, again, that would look ridiculous. I haven't seen anything about that's true at all. It sounds like what started this was the 911 call Paul made from the bathroom. But original reports were that this was a wellness check, which begs the question. The 911 saying he knows the guy's name, it being 2:30 in the morning. Maybe the fact that he got busted for a Dewey wreck 3 months ago, whatever it was, also plays into people's minds that this guy's life might be in like a bit of turmoil. He's supposedly sober. That obviously doesn't make any sense. So I think the conspiracy is that this was a relationship that he was having, and it was a domestic, which, by the way, has happened many times in the history of government. How many times has the Secret Service covered for sitting U.S. presidents who were having multiple affairs?
Oh yeah,
Clinton and Kennedy being two of the most notorious.
Mimi Beardsley and
right. And I have friends that were former Secret Service during all those time periods, and the stories I hear are insane. Absolutely conspiratorial in terms of letting people in the back, letting him know when, so-and-so's wife is the president's wife's coming back to the house, get the F out of here. Like, I mean, this happens. So so that's not a crazy thing to wonder. I think it's crazy in this day and age, as you said, to not wonder, not ask the questions, and not press for transparency and say, hey, fine, release the 911 call, release the body cam footage. Obviously, you're going to redact it. You're not going to show Paul getting his head cracked open. You can blur that out. But the majority of that should be released, and then it puts it all to bed. But again, that to me is what's the most shocking part, is that people trust so much that they look at people who question and say, look at us like we're flat earthers. Was the actions of a crazy person. And they're charged both federally on the state level, which means I say this not because I want this guy to, this guy should die in jail. Anyone who breaks into someone's house, he's lucky he broke into someone's house. Well, it's California, but that wasn't armed, because that's the nightmare scenario. You wake up and somebody's in your bedroom, and I don't know if he's back, but he's lucky he didn't get shot, and so he deserves to get a serious jail sentence. But he's charged state federally. I hope he fights it, in the sense that if they're not going to release a lot of this information, I would like to see this disclosed. I would like to see this published. I'm a trial guy, so I love watching trials. So just selfishly, aside from anything else, I would love to watch this play out, just because I think you get a lot more information from a case that goes to trial, of course, than one that's pled out. I have a feeling that he's going to plea out. I don't know. The attempted murder thing, I guess they're going to release more information on that. I'm not so sure. I'm not so convinced that they're going to get him on the attempted murder, but he's going to get enough charges, federal and state, that he's going to be doing ridiculous amount of time. So is your dial-up crapping out?
I don't. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. That's weird. But one of the other things I wanted to make sure we talk about is the conspiracy within the conspiracy, which is equally equally worrisome and equally dangerous as far as democracy and free speech goes. And it's the rush from the other side to accuse this DePape guy being this right-wing zealot. And what is the proof of that? Where are the facts of that? Where is there any evidence that he's a white supremacist anti-Semite who is a election denier?
So well, that's what Biden said in a quote. Like, this comes from people denying the election,
Right.
which I had a clip I could play, as we've seen, you know, 3 minutes straight of Democrats denying the 2016 election.
Right. Exactly.
And they go, well, she conceded the election. Yeah, she conceded it, and then went on a press tour denying the entire election.
Right.
Russian interference, Russian. So it's like, you know, again, it's this. It goes back to the whole Elon thing as well, which is all people want is an equal enforcement of the rules. So if you can deny a 2016 election, you should be able to deny a 2020 election.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to play by the same rules.
That's
And
the double standard.
Total double standard. But yeah, rushing to say this person is affiliated with the, as you heard in that CBS report. So you're like, what people don't understand is when someone says we went and we found documents or a website he's a part of that has a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theories. What is a right-wing conspiracy theory exactly?
Yeah, right.
You know, that's someone's judgment on reading something and saying, oh, this is right-wing. Whereas I might read it and go, well, half of that's true because it's been proven true. And the other half of that is, you know, flat earther chemtrails that have nothing to do with anything.
Right.
But they're processing that and doing the conclusion for you. So someone goes out and repeats it and says, oh, he's a right-wing guy. I heard he was full of right-wing. No, I want to see the supposed right-wing because his house has a pride flag. And I believe there's another photo of in his window, there's a BLM poster. So he also thinks he's Jesus. So he's also, his wife's or partner said he's very progressive. So that is very problematic because if you're just trying to ironically say there's so much hate because of all the right-wing rhetoric, and then you come out and say he's a right-winger, by the way, so we should all condemn people on the right, you're just making the problem worse because you're feeding you're fueling the fire.
Right.
You're saying, oh, look at this lunatic, he's a right-wing. You're like, oh, so you're contributing to the animosity. And now people have to go out and say, you know, he actually wasn't. And you go, well, what are you, conspiracy theory? Of course he was. The media told me he was super right-wing.
Right.
Like, it doesn't look like a lot of right-wingers that I know.
They're caught lying over and over and over again. So when, you know, maybe you get a legitimate story, as this may turn out to be, you're going to have people out there who are skeptical and who think there's more to it than meets the eye. And that's classic boy who cried wolf. You know, if you continue to lie and you continue to get caught not telling the truth and you continue to politicize everything so that it fits your agenda, you're going to have people coming out and questioning things.
Right. And rightfully so. Like when the Smollett thing happened and it was immediately politicized, and this has got to end. This rhetoric from Donald Trump, it's a dog whistle. We heard that for 4 years. It's the dog whistle. And then 99% of these cases, these supposed hate crimes, when I follow them down on Google, are bogus.
Yeah.
And they're either committed by the person making the accusation or someone that they know and have nothing to do with supposedly the thing that they're claiming it is. And that is so bad that I don't understand how people who do that aren't charged with a crime that has a punishment as severe as the allegation itself. In other words, if you accuse someone of something that bad, that carries a 15 or 20-year sentence, and it turns out that that's false, then there should be some serious repercussions because it's so bad, as you said, because of the boy who cried wolf, how that will play out, meaning that the next time someone comes along that's actually serious and has a real claim, people are going to be treated with skepticism they may not deserve. But it's very bad to go out and claim things like that. And when you find out that there are no nooses in the garages and there's no MAGA guys running around Chicago, then what do you expect that the next time it comes up? And I'm just surprised at how many people can get fooled every single time. And I'm like, but you know that the last three major ones were bogus.
Mm-hmm.
And you still, the girl on the subway who got her hijab knocked off and was, it was MAGA attack. And it turns out she was just late, missed her curfew and made up a bullshit story, right?
Yeah.
That was a big story here in New York because it was on the subway. How does that not stick with you? And the next person who comes along, you go, how? Because you're so convinced that these things are happening at such a higher rate that every time it comes up, it's total confirmation bias. These people are like, oh yeah, there's another example. And you're like, but those are all being proven false if you follow them down. And it's weird how people can just continue to delude themselves as these things happen.
Yeah. And let's not forget about the timing. of this. The midterm elections are right around the corner.
Great point.
The left has a lot to want to, distract from. They are, in many of these elections, trying to stoke fear.
Yep.
Republicans are these right-wing crazies who are flooding the streets with guns and who want to take your right to have an abortion away.
Yeah.
And, they're all election deniers. And, so this kind of...
Yeah, the timing of it makes it worse.
Yeah, and the rush to accuse this attacker of being a right-wing nut kind of feeds into that fear. Right-wing white males are the most dangerous thing on the planet.
Yep.
Nuclear weapons,
I heard that I saw a report that this guy might actually be here illegally. I don't know if that's been validated yet, but that would also be an interesting twist, because it reminds me of that story of the little girl in Ohio who was denied an abortion, who was raped, and there's a whole debate about that, of course, right? Because if you're attacked, people get pretty upset at the idea that you should be forced to carry the baby of your rapist.
Yeah.
But similarly, and that is a disturbing situation. Similarly, if the guy should have never been here in the first place, we should also talk about that.
Yeah.
Like if you want to talk about causality and the impact of that, then let's be honest about it and say, that's a really horrible situation. The idea that an adolescent is raped and should have to carry the baby full term. But let's also talk about how someone who's not supposed to even be here is able to rape that kid in the first place and how horrible that is.
I mean, listen, not to suggest that all immigrants, illegal or not, are criminals, but there is no shortage of stories, whether it's rape or murder or drug related or, whatever it is, that are committed by people who shouldn't be in this country
in the first place.
That's a separate episode, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we're running a little long. I don't know how much. Oh yeah, we've been on for about an hour here, so let's wrap it up. I know we're going to do another show probably later this week. I want to talk about Ukraine. I want to talk about the war and this proxy war we're involved in and the implications of that, and that mess as we slowly spiral towards World War III, and everyone gets to put Ukrainian flags in their avatars and their screen, to feel better about life as we're getting nuked. So we'll talk about that later this week. I know that's going to be a long conversation.
Certainly looking forward to that, as having served in the military for many years and having studied geopolitics and
breaking up again, but yeah, I know you did serve and you do have a very good, deep understanding of all this. Oh, you're back. We lost you for a second there. No,
I heard everything, so I look forward to that. Talking about that, and thanks for having me again.
Yeah, sounds good, and we'll talk later this week. To everyone else who watches this episode, thanks, and have a good night. See you later.